What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the SP and Bushy Show. Bushy, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, man. I'm excited, but I'm a little sad. You know, a lot of sports that we had the last 2 months are starting to wind down, and yeah, it's going to be just football for the next couple of months. It seems like.
Well, it looks like you kind of moved out of like dark dungeon area and more into like an avalanche sanctuary there.
Yeah, so white light. Yeah, so white light. A bunch of avalanche snow. Getting ready for the fall/winter. So better good mood.
That's awesome, man. I love the new set that you're on.
Oh, it is great. Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of complaints from family and friends, so I decided to move up.
Well, I mean, I wasn't ever gonna complain, but I mean, I definitely like the abs gear in the background a little better.
Yes, definitely a lot better than just a bunch of like wooden panels and a bunch of orange boxes.
Yeah, I was wondering what you were moving.
Just moving Halloween stuff. Get ready for Halloween. Getting ready for the trick or treaters and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. What was your favorite costume that you were ever for Halloween?
Oh, geez. Oh, this is a toughie, man. Because there was definitely some good ones.
Uh,
I was kind of out there as well. I mean, usually you had the occasional Power Rangers or something like that, or like a Wolverine. Um, I would have to say probably the last year I actually like truly dressed up as a kid. I think it was like seventh grade, I believe. I was Charlie Chaplin.
oh, neat.
Yes, I was Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, and I had the little mustache and everything, and I kind of walked like him on the side. Had the cane, the top hat, everything. It was crazy. Again, I was kind of out there as well. I think the year before I was a hippie. I think I was the crypt keeper one year from Tales from the Crypt.
That sounds awesome.
Yes, yeah, it was like a doctor suit too. So obviously there was some fake blood on the doctor's scrubs and all that. So it was cool. What about you?
Ooh, that's a tough one for me too. I mean, uh, last couple of years, it feels like at least a couple of times I've gone as the Riddler. I was a huge fan of like the 1960s Batman, and the Riddler was always one of my favorites. So I tracked down a costume for it one year, and I've gone for it as a couple of times as an adult. And then it was pretty funny because a couple of years ago, Andrea dressed up as Batman, or not Batman. She dressed up as Robin, and our dog was Batman. So we kind of had like a family themed costume with our dog, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
That
that
one
that
was
is
awesome.
awesome. Oh, just thinking about that. Oh yeah, I was Robin one year too during the Batman and Robin type of years, the Batman Forever, Batman and Robin years. I think I was Robin one year.
Oh man,
Yeah, but
with your height, I would have figured you for Batman.
somebody. I think my cousin Scott was Batman. If memory serves me right, he was Batman and I was Robin. So we had to. I think the I think the Robin costume probably fit me better than the Batman. So that's why he chose Batman and I chose Robin.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, you had the occasional, Power Rangers, Wolverine. I think Batman, Robin. I think I was a ninja one time. But yeah, it's like usually it's like pretty generic. But the last couple of years, when I dressed up pretty crazy, like again like a hippie, and then Charlie Chaplin, something out of the blue, and nobody really dressed up as that.
That's pretty cool. I think everyone's been a ninja at least once, right? For Halloween.
I
I
think
think that's
so.
like kid rule. Like you had to growing up, you at least had to do the ninja thing once.
It was like, yeah, it was like ninja or a pirate. That was always one of the things. Or Frankenstein. Those were probably the big three for us as far as with boy kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I did that a few times. I think I was a pirate twice. I think it was a ninja once. I've done it all, or I haven't done it all, but I've done those few a lot. So
Yeah, I haven't dressed up in a while. It's just Halloween. It's all right now to me, but I enjoy handing out candy to the trick or treaters.
absolutely, me too. And I love watching horror movies. So Who knows? This year, I think it'll probably just be a nice little horror movie marathon at our house.
Absolutely. It's probably going to be the same thing as well at my house.
And if you have any ideas of any horror movies we should be watching, let us know in the comments.
Yes, we may actually review him on this podcast if it's something that him and I have never seen, or it may be if he has seen it or I haven't, and vice versa.
We had our breakdown of sudden death a few weeks ago, and then welcome to sudden death on top of that. So we don't just stick to sports here. We will definitely do a little bit of cinema chatting anytime. So
Absolutely, and we'll see it. We'll see it, and we'll review it, folks. If you have a recommendation, please comment and show us. We're gladly to watch movies and see if we like them or not.
yeah, we appreciate any interaction, and we appreciate you watching. Let's get into episode 4, and just start chatting. We'll go back to last week. Bushy, what stood out to you once again as far as the football?
With the football, I really, since the Big Ten really hasn't started yet, it really feels like we're heading towards another Alabama-Clemson clash. Like Clemson looked very dominant. I mean, Trevor Lawrence had a career day, and he only played like a half of football. And Alabama looked very dominant against Georgia in the second half as well. They took matters into their own hands as well. So it really looks like we're heading towards another Alabama-Clemson national championship clash.
Yeah, those have definitely been the top 2 teams from what I've seen so far. I mean, Clemson had just thrashed Georgia Tech. I watched, the first half of that game, and then I think I shut it off when it was 35-7, just because, like I said, it got out of hand, and it got out of hand in a hurry. And I mean, anyone who thought that Georgia Tech was going to be the one to put that loss on them was sorely mistaken, because they showed up in a big, big way on Saturday.
I didn't watch any of that game, but I saw the score. And again, I was texting you back and forth, and you were telling me just how how badly Clemson was beating Georgia Tech. So I really guess I didn't really have to watch it and all that. So I ended up watching just other games.
The game that, there's another great game I thought was the UCF Memphis game. And what's really turned into a good rivalry the last few years, those 2 teams have really put on some instant classics, it feels like, in the last couple of years. And those 2 teams, every time they get together, it's really getting to be must-see TV.
Absolutely, those games are fun. It's probably the mid-major battle to really kind of take a look at and see, because both teams are very competitive, and it's a really back and forth game. And man, it seems like it's always high scoring, and it always seems like it has to go down to the last 5 minutes of the game. So again, always a very good game to watch, and just a fun game to watch. Some of those mid-major games are always fun to watch. Again, I think a couple of weeks ago I mentioned that SMU Memphis game as well. That was the most compelling game that I watched over that weekend.
And of course, again, Alabama Georgia was a fun game that night. I mean, a lot of good football to be played on Saturday. And again, I agree. I think right now Alabama getting past Georgia was a huge hurdle for them. And now that they've kind of gone through their trials there, it looks like they could be on their way to yet another SEC crown.
Absolutely. And we also got to talk about, too, Florida State. Are they like in the likes of Nebraska and Texas? Are they kind of on their way back with a dominant well, not a dominant victory, but a victory over a top 5 team in North Carolina? It was a really good game. It's just like, oh, you felt really bad for Florida State, because it looked like they were gonna come back. And I got to give my bonehead player of the week, actually, to the North Carolina receivers. I mean, it wasn't like these balls were they're kind of like had to reach out and trying to really catch them. I mean, these were very, very catchable balls, in which they should have caught them, and they just completely dropped them. They for 3 straight downs on their last possession, they dropped it. I mean, it was completely catchable balls that they dropped, and they really cost North Carolina the game, and maybe even forced it into overtime. against Florida State. Florida State got up to a really big lead. They were up 31-3, and North Carolina really stormed back in the second half, and they got it to 31-28. And it just looked like Florida State was going to get, kicked in the stomach again from these heartbreaking losses. That it just, but it was good for the program, good for Mike Norvell, obviously, the Memphis coach. Came over from Florida State, so big victory for him.
I'm not quite sold on Florida State being back. Obviously, this was a big signature win against North Carolina. I mean, a lot of these old powerhouses like Florida State, it seems like it's kind of fallen on these hard times. And I mean, they were pretty low in the record book, I believe, before that. Weren't they 0-3 going into that game?
They were 1-3.
1-3. And it's a big.
Yeah, and their one victory, they did not look impressive against really a low-level opponent in Jacksonville.
I mean, it's definitely a signature win. I just don't know if it's just a win where North Carolina may have overlooked them. Either way, I mean, Florida State, with Florida, you always have the ability to recruit the talented players there. You can definitely build a powerhouse there. But right now, I mean, it just like we've seen, it's just so tough to try and wrestle that conference away from Clemson. Dabo Swinney is such a good coach, and right now it's going to be tough seeing anyone try to rise up and take over against them.
It is going to be a tough, but again, this is this guy's first year, so you got to give it time. Again, you got to give the guy maybe 3 years. And 3 years, if they start winning games and then maybe playing Clemson a little tough and forcing them into overtime, then you can see that program is really have started to come back.
That's true. Now, obviously, Big Ten does start this week. Bushy, what are you looking for this week?
Is anybody going to dethrone Ohio State? Really, like Ohio State is really have done nothing, but they've climbed up in the polls really just by doing nothing and sitting and practicing and they've kind of moved up to the top 5. And we'll see if anybody's willing to dethrone Ohio State.
I'm very excited to see tomorrow night Wisconsin, see what they look like this year. It seems like they're always close, but just can't get over the hump. And I think that they're a team that has the potential to take that step, but they got to get past Illinois, a team that beat them last year. So hopefully they can make that move, show people that they are that team that's ready to kind of make that next step against Illinois and maybe rise up in the Big Ten.
Yeah, we'll see too. We'll see with Minnesota as well. Minnesota had a really great year last year, and we'll see if they're ready to take another step on top of that Big 12 and really become the Big 12 elite.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Minnesota, again, they got a great coach in place with PJ there. I think that they're going to start taking some steps forward, like you said, a team that really is on the rise. And it's going to be interesting to see if Michigan can make that rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State competitive again. Because if you look at it, it hasn't even been that fun in the last few years with Ohio State pretty much just putting it on them every year.
They've had a couple of fun games the past few years, but really, yeah, it's just been all Ohio State, I think, for the past 2 decades. So, again, we don't know. Hopefully Jim Harbaugh can get that signature win. Again, he's kind of searching. He could be probably on the hot seat at Michigan there. So we could be talking in a few months from now, is Michigan going to be looking for a new coach?
It certainly, is a possibility. Again, Big Ten football starting this week should be exciting. We look forward to hopefully watching some of those games this weekend.
Don't forget the Mountain West. Come on.
I mean, I saw a couple of those games get canceled.
Yeah, at least one I saw from the CSU New Mexico game. I saw that, the Colorado State New Mexico game. I saw that. So, but it looks like the Air Force is about to go on. And then, and then 2 weeks, Pac-12 is going to start up. So we're going to have some Pac-12 games. We may have some 10 a.m. kickoffs in the Pac-12 as well here, and then some Pac-12 after dark. So it's just good that we're probably going to get a really full slate of college football games. Or basically, we're going to be watching it for 12, 13 hours now.
Yeah, back to normal, like we would say. And obviously, it's one of those things where, especially with MLB now in the World Series, basketball and hockey starting up, who knows, either later this year or early next year, we're definitely going to need that football to carry us through the sports world through the next few months.
Yes, absolutely. Isn't it crazy as well? Because usually this is right around the time where we're excited that all the sports are playing. You know, like football's in full swing, both college and pros. Baseball is right. We're right around the CS and the World Series time, and hockey and basketball are starting up. So we're getting all these sports and all that. Now with this year, it's just wow. Like okay, like all the sports are finished, and now now it's like now it's going to be football for the next 2 months.
It is, and I mean, it's got to do what baseball usually does in the summer. That's just kind of carry us through. Now we're going to go to baseball. Let's talk about it. World Series is underway. Dodgers get the victory last night. They rallied after we talked last week on this program about the Braves really having them in a hole, and the Astros obviously rallying to make that series exciting as well. What are your thoughts been on the MLB postseason since we last spoke?
It's been really exciting. I've actually been watching a ton of the MLB playoffs, a lot more than the NBA Finals this year, and it's just been exciting. All the games really have been exciting as well, and we had a almost a comeback in the ALCS with the Astros forcing a game seven, but unfortunately losing. And then we had the Dodgers coming back from 3-1 and winning a game seven and having to come back at that game seven to come back and win as well. So it was a very exciting weekend of baseball.
It sure was. And now obviously you're in a World Series, Rays and Dodgers, two teams that are really like on opposite ends of the spectrum. Obviously you have the Dodgers payroll up here and you have like the Rays payroll down here, and the Rays just kind of doing it with some of these guys that, aren't the household names. They aren't the Bellingers or the Kershaws or the Mookie Betts of the world. And it's really exciting to see them in this World Series, and hopefully as an underdog, or at least in my opinion, I would love to see the Rays get it done and kind of show, that it isn't all about how much or how deep your pocketbook is.
Yeah, it's really just the style of clashing styles. You have you have the Dodgers with the top payroll, best team money could buy. Everybody kind of jokes with them, and then you have the Rays, kind of this money ball element. So it's really just a clash of two styles, which is, I guess, a great system. And the Rays are always like a blueprint for some of these small market teams of how to be a successful franchise.
Yeah, I would love to see them kind of pull off the shocker and get it done. Obviously, they ran into some trouble last night. Hopefully, they get it done tonight with Blake Snell on the mound.
Absolutely, but the Dodgers really have all the momentum right now. Coming back from 3-1 and winning a very, very exciting Game 7 against the Braves, and then really, really handling the Rays in Game 1. The Dodgers really have all the momentum right now, and let's see if the Rays can win one and try to maybe steal some of that momentum from LA.
Are the Braves turning into like the '90s Braves, a team that like always gets to like either a CS or a World Series and then just not being able to finish it off?
They're starting to feel like that. Really, again, I mean, you go back to last year as well. They get pounced in the division series against St. Louis, and how they lose by game 5, and they gave up, I believe, 15, 16 runs. And then this year, it seems like they were really dominating the Dodgers those first 4 games of the series, and then 5, 6, 7, it just seemed like it all fell apart as well. And again, they find a way to lose games as well with all these base running blunders as well. I don't know if you saw it with Game 7. They had a pickle that somehow turned into a double play. I mean, it was just really blunder after blunder.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because obviously that franchise is one of the ones that just really finds a way to do well historically, but just never finds a way to finish it off. And it'd be fun to see them finish it off, at least get to a World Series. But man, I mean, they are one of those ones that just seems to find a way to snatch defeat away from the jaws of victory.
It's just it's man, where we may have to start thinking about Atlanta as one of the most, I think, like, depressing sports cities as well. As far as pro sports, like, I know they won an MLS title a few years ago, and and that's really been their only major title. But yeah, when you go back to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, and now the past 2 years with losing in the DS by a significant amount in Game 5, and then blowing a 3-1 lead this year, and then oh, and then and then you go with the Falcons this season as well, giving up multiple fourth quarter leads as well. I mean, it's just a really depressing situation.
It certainly is. I mean, that's going to be another one of those topics we're going to have to discuss going forward at some point. It's going to be one of those depressing sports cities or snake bitten franchises. I mean, there's so many of these lists to discuss. I mean, there's a lot of teams that have really had that misfortune, and the Atlanta Braves certainly are one of them. Nevertheless, like you said, the Dodgers gained all that momentum. Let's see if Tampa Bay can slow them down here in this series moving forward.
Absolutely, they need to get timely hits as well. So hopefully they can maybe come back this game and get back timely hits again.
Of course, man. Now, turning our attention to the NFL, what jumped out to you on the NFL this weekend?
What really jumped out on me actually was the Buccaneers actually really dominating the Packers. Actually, I was watching most of that game, and I watched like that first part of the game and went, "Wow, holy moly!" Like, man, Packers are just going to steamroll. It looks like Tampa Bay may be pretenders, but then they really came back and it really dominated that game. Literally from probably the second quarter on, they really dominated that game. Like it looked like the Packers couldn't do anything at all.
Yeah, actually, I turned it on just in time to see kind of the momentum shift in that game. I mean, when Rodgers threw that pick six, I mean, at that point, the Packers had been rolling. He throws that pick six on a great defensive play, and then the Buccaneers able to get another pick right after that. That really flipped the game on its side. And, I mean, Tampa Bay is one of those teams, again, it feels like they have definitely maximized their full potential of their salary cap, and they are really pushing for it this year. I mean, again, like you, I thought they might have been a pretender, especially given the quality of the opponents that they've beaten so far, but then struggling against some of the better teams. But, man, they put it on Rodgers and company. I turned it off after it was like 14-10 to go winterize my swamp cooler, and I came back thinking it was going to be a game still, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it really was a dominating performance, and you just felt like, oh, Rodgers was going to come back, but really he couldn't do anything, and he looked very out of sorts. And give credit to that Tampa Bay defense, like they really stymied that Packers offense.
Yeah, they are definitely one of those units that doesn't get enough credit with everyone putting their focus on the offensive side of the ball with Brady. I mean, that defense is really strong. It has a lot of solid players on it. Shaq Barrett, like we mentioned, one of the top pass rushers in football. We mentioned him in episode 1. Obviously, a guy that the Broncos probably wish they could have back. And, I mean, he is just a difference maker on that defense.
He definitely is, and really, there's nothing else to say. I mean, it's just Buck, and it didn't really feel like the Packers had really a pass rush, which that's how you got to stop Brady is really get a pass rush, get in his face, and force him to some of these throws. And really, it felt like the Packers were like, here, let's play 7-on-7 football, and you can't really do that against Tom Brady.
You really can't. Absolutely. You got to go at him, and you got to bring the house at him hard. And that's the Packers didn't do. I mean, for me, I got to look at Broncos getting it done against the Patriots in a game that took a long time to get played. I know Patriots defenders will say, oh, they didn't have the time to practice. Oh, they didn't have this or that. I mean, really, the Broncos could have ran away with that game. The Patriots defense stood tall, held them to field goals, but it was an impressive win, and the Broncos defense looks like it's starting to find its group.
Absolutely, and they could get some people back as well with AJ Bouye coming back from IR, who played really well in that first half against the Titans. So, it could be a defense that's actually somehow going to get stronger as it goes along. And it really was an impressive victory. Like, really, the Broncos dominated that game the first 55 minutes of that game. It was really well, and I thought the offense moved the ball really well, except on the goal line. Even though they should have had a couple of caught passes in the end zone, but it just great defensive play by the Patriots. But maybe they could fix that. But all in all, it was a really good game by the Broncos. I was very impressed by that victory.
It sure was. I was impressed by it. Although I am going to go to this game for my bonehead of the week, and that is going to be Vic Fangio. Another situation where he just seems to have no clue how to use his timeouts. And I mean, if you look at it, they're driving the ball down the field. It's about a minute 22 left. They run a play. It's a run play. He gets stopped in bounds. They've been moving the ball really well on the ground. But instead of using a timeout, he lets the whole 30 seconds almost run off the clock before they snap the ball for the next play. They throw a couple of incomplete passes, and they end up using just one of their 3 timeouts before the half, where it's a point when they had all the momentum. If they could have kept running that football and kind of keep pounding it down their throats, they might have been able to actually get that elusive touchdown in that game.
They could have, and it just seems like Vic Fangio, he hates the clock for some reason. I feel like he's Captain Hook some ways. He just hates that ticking time of the clock for some reason. Like he gets his clock management is really up there. And I thought Vance Joseph was a bad clock management. This guy's worse. He really is, and it's just so frustrating because it's just, man, like there was really no reason for that game to be as close as it was scoreboard wise. Like his game sense really, I guess he just didn't understand it. Like it's just like sometimes, it's just run the ball, make him force a timeout, and then punt the ball and have Cam Newton drive, 75, 80 yards compared to 50 yards when they threw the first pick, and it's just very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Hook's a good way to say it, but yeah, he seems to have no idea that there's even a clock up there. Like, he doesn't know how to call timeouts. He doesn't know how to manage it at all. And, I mean, for a guy who's been in the league this long and a guy who's been waiting for this opportunity this long, he looks very much like a coordinator who doesn't know how to have any idea how to manage a clock.
He does. It's going back. I mean, this has been a 2-season problem, and it's just been frustrating seeing it. And it's just like, because maybe some of his clock management skills will maybe prevent a team from maybe winning or losing.
I mean, they really had a chance to put that first loss on the Tennessee Titans that first week. And again, he doesn't call those timeouts and give his team a chance to get the ball back in that game either. And Tennessee did everything they could with all the missed kicks to try and give the Broncos that game.
It's funny. It's like you think about it with starting with the season. Really, the Broncos probably played 3 of probably the better teams in the NFL to start the season, with the Titans, the Steelers, and the Bucks. It really shouldn't be a shock that the fact that we've won the past 2 games, because really on an even playing field now, the Broncos are probably not bad.
They really probably aren't. And I mean, what we've seen from Tennessee is that they may be the best team in the league. They get another big victory last week against the Texans. They were able to fight back and win that game. Derrick Henry is an absolute monster out there. And I mean, Tannehill is doing a really good job there too. Big win for Tennessee. I mean, they might be the best team in the league.
This next week's game against Pittsburgh, it's going to be probably one of the game of the year candidates. It's going to be an exciting game. I'm very excited to watch that.
I can't wait for it either. Like I said, right now, I mean, Tennessee looks as good to me as anyone in football. Derrick Henry is so tough to stop. And I like Mike Vrabel as a coach. You can see the savviness of Belichick kind of rubbing off on him. Like, in that game against the Texans, he has a guy take a penalty seemingly deliberately with the too many men on the field to give the Texans an automatic first down and preserve some of that clock. And they end up using every bit of that clock to get that game-tying touchdown before winning it in overtime.
Yeah, it actually may be a actual live branch in the Belichick tree. That's actually alive and doing well. When we really have crapped on probably the Belichick trade tree for years now, but it seems like it finally has something with with Mike Vrabel and all that. He may actually replace Bill O'Brien as probably the best pro coach in the Belichick tree.
Certainly looks that way so far. I mean, that team looks really good. It looks like they're going to be dangerous. I mean, Seattle's still looking good as well. So, I mean, you got 3 unbeatens left. Steelers and Titans, 2 of those unbeatens mean this week in a game, like you said, Bushy, that could tell us a lot going down the road.
Yeah, and it could tell who's really good and who really isn't, or it could tell if both teams are going to be good, and we may see another clash in January between these two teams.
We certainly could. It's obviously a fun season so far. Anything else kind of jump? One other thing I did want to mention. It's not really a meme. It might be a GIF. I don't know if someone's turned it into a GIF yet. But the thing that I saw that jumps out to me is sort of the GIF slash meme of the week. It was the Cowboys game against the Cardinals the other night. They were played a highlight of it. Like some Cowboys fan is just sitting there devastated in the stands. And like his girlfriend or whoever just keeps kissing him on the side of the cheek to try and bring him out of it. And she just can't bring him out of this depression of watching the Cowboys play so bad against the Cardinals. That one to me is like the social media moment, I would say, of the week.
Absolutely. I can't top that. That was going to be mine as well. So I can't top that. It was just so funny just seeing that poor Cowboys fan just going like this and seeing his, really supportive girlfriend really try to be supportive of this moment, because really, I mean, the Cowboys really stunk it up on Monday night. Like really, the only reason you watched that game, from after the first quarter on, was really for gambling and fantasy purposes. Really the only reason why you watched that game. And unfortunately, I had people on my fantasy team, so I had to watch that game, and it was not fun. It felt like it was pulling teeth.
I mean, obviously, I flipped the game off at that point. I think we watched another movie on Shudder, getting ready for the Halloween season with the horror movies. That being said, man, I just, like I said, did you at least win the fantasy game since you had to stay up and watch the game?
I did actually. Yes, I ended up beating my sister-in-law, so I'm very happy about that. Amari Cooper got that, oh, by the way, touchdown right at the end. So that really propelled me to beat her. So I got a Monday Night Miracle because of that. I'm sorry, Ashley. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
And the game is ever cruel in the world of fantasy sports, man. That is for sure. I mean, especially those people who are banking on Dak Prescott after the first few weeks when he was a monster, and then unfortunately had that horrible injury, and hopefully he gets better off of that. But nevertheless,
Yeah, and it could be a chance where we may get a 6-10 team that could win a division. We could finally see a 6-10 team win a division, and it's gonna be odd.
shoot, I mean, I think any of those teams would be lucky to get to 6-10 the way they're playing. The Eagles at least looked okay against Baltimore. They made it competitive down the stretch with a like late rally, but really they never really were much in that game. I mean, the Giants and Redskins seemed very evenly matched, and now, especially without Dak, the Cowboys just look like they're no threat either. So, I mean, whatever team wins that division, like, is going to be in for a real likely beating at the hands of someone in the first round of the playoffs.
It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be that first game. Probably. It's probably going to be that first game on ESPN that they show every year, which was usually reserved by the Houston Texans. But since the Texans aren't likely to make the playoffs this year, I think that's going to go to the whoever plays the NFC East winner.
Yeah, that's going to be a ridiculous. Like I said, I'm going to go with Philadelphia there right now, just based on what I'm seeing. They look like they may be the best suited team to come out of that division, but and they have that funky tie with Cincinnati that may, like with everyone else being 6-10, they might be 6-9-1 and sneak into the playoffs by a half game tie because of their tie with Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's that again. Yeah, that tie could come back and really show that they really did the smart move in punting with just like under a minute left during the Bengals in the overtime. So I mean, I guess Doug Peterson is really thinking really ahead.
Today's big discussion is what basketball games would you be at if you, of course, had a time machine? Before we get into that, though, our nicknames discussion from a couple weeks ago is still getting some love out there on the YouTube. And so we had a couple of more honorable mentions for our nickname discussion coming in from Will Law. Gary Payton's The Glove, which was like just
Oh,
barely off my list.
yeah, he was on the honorable mention. I think if we had a list of 15 or 20, he would have been on the list. That was definitely a great that was definitely a great nickname, and he'll probably come up in our discussion discussion.
Absolutely. And I mean, Gary Payton, one of those great players. It's kind of crazy. Like I've like gotten back into playing like NBA Shootout 98. And so like Gary Payton's one of those players I always love to have in that game too. So I mean, he's just one of those players that has a good sentimental value for me.
Don't
And
worry,
I mean,
folks. That will be a future list. So don't worry. Don't put it on the comments. That will be a future list. We may go to the best sport video games, and we may do the worst on each genre.
absolutely. And then of course on that say or on some of those teams with Gary Payton was Vin Baker the microwave.
Yeah, the microwave. I mean, that was the definition of a heat check.
Absolutely. Another fun guy from those 90s Sonics teams, Vin Baker. Billy White Shoes Johnson, I know, was a guy that was one of your list guys.
Yeah, he was on my honorable mention list. Just a great name, and like again, I love names that roll off the tongue. When people say Billy White Shoes Johnson, that's what they mean. Billy White Shoes Johnson.
And another one of those ones where like, man, this nicknames discussion could just go on for eternity. But Jerome Bettis the bus, man, like how do we leave him off?
Oh, I don't know, man. Like he was very prominent during the time when we were growing up and starting to really get into sports. It just and again, just people use that nickname as well. Like I think you gotta say the bus Jerome Bettis all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of those guys that, man, like Sweetness with Walter Payton, we talked about it last week, just has one of those iconic nicknames. So keep those nicknames coming. And if there are any baseball games that you feel like you missed, weigh in on our show last week. And then, of course, if there's NBA or NCAA basketball games you feel like we're leaving out that you wish you could have attended, feel free to leave those in the comments here on YouTube. We'll read them off here on the show. We'll interact, and then we'll, of course, give you our take on some of those games that you wish you could have been at as well.
Absolutely. I have a ton on here, and I really could have added probably another, probably a little 5 or 10 more.
Yeah, it's kind of loaded. I mean, obviously, I did like a top 10. You went a little overboard, which is totally fine since we're trying to do NCAA and NBA at the same time. So it obviously is a little bit tough to try and get both into a top 10 list, which makes it obviously very tough. So, I mean, there's so many of these games to talk about. I'm going to preface it and just say flat out, if there was a way for me to attend every NCAA tournament game, I would. Like, the NCAA tournament is like my favorite sporting event of the year. It's like Christmas to me. It is the best event of the year, bar none. It was so sad that we didn't get it this year. And I mean, my current job is the first job I've had where I actually try to like go to work on those days as opposed to like calling in sick so I can watch the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely, those games are amazing. I always enjoyed the first week of the NCAA tournament because we get like 8 games a day, especially on that Thursday and Friday, and then we get another 8 to 6 games on Saturday and Sunday, and it's always a great experience to be a part of. And whenever there's an upset, then you get all excited, and especially if it's a team that you picked an upset on. So that's always a very exciting moment.
Absolutely. It's one of those events that every year just seems to lend itself to magic moments. So, like I said, I could be at any of these NCAA tournament games, past, present, future, and be totally happy. And it's, again, another thing, too, with like conference tournament basketball, too. I don't think either of us put any conference tournament games on there, but those conference tournaments are a lot of fun and a lot of excitement as well.
Absolutely. I think most of my list, except for maybe one game, is all strictly NCAA tournament games, and those games are always fun. Those and again, yeah, and it seems like too. Looking over on the list that I have, I definitely have a ton more NCAA tournament games rather than NBA games.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's just I like the college basketball style of play a little bit better. And obviously, I love the NCAA tournament as opposed to like the NBA finals or something like that. So I think that's the reason why I trended a lot more to NCAA games. And I mean, I had another honorable mention that I didn't even really get into, and that's going to be the 2010 Big Ten championship game between UConn and Syracuse that went into like 7 overtimes. Johnny Flynn
Oh, Big
making an
East. Oh,
insane
you're going
amount of
Big
free
East, baby.
throws. It's a fun game, and it's one of my honorable mentions that I didn't want to put on here just because it's such a long game. But man, is that a fun game.
That was a fun game and just a lot of overtimes, and you're just like, oh man. I want to go back even further to further that statement as well. I think it was I believe in 2008 or 2009, yeah, UConn and Syracuse had a 6 overtime game, and
I
man,
think
that game was crazy.
that's the game I mean, I think.
Oh, is that the game you mean? Oh, I'm
I think
sorry.
that's the game I mean. I might have said the
Yeah,
wrong year.
yeah, but man, that game was just so much fun to be a part of, and it actually really propelled Syracuse because when they won that game, I believe they won the tournament championship that year.
Yeah, they won the Big East tournament. And I mean, that was like a game because I actually was covering the Big 12 championship game that year. And so I remember we were all like media personnel, like huddling around the TV just to watch the end of this Big East championship game that started before our last game of the night and still was in a bunch of overtimes after our game ended. So, I mean, it was one of those games that always stood out to me. And I mean, it would have been fun to be there for.
It's one of those games where you love on TV, but if you're working the event, you absolutely hate it. Like you and I have both worked in the professional, sports industry, and that's one thing we absolutely hate if we're working the event. We hate overtimes.
That is for sure. I mean, obviously, it lends itself to some excitement, but usually for people that are working in sports, especially if you're the event host, it is a lot of work.
Especially, yeah, and especially too if somebody blurs out that dreaded overtime word. I mean, seriously, they get villainized like nobody's business. Like they are scolded for the entire rest of the day, or maybe the entire rest of the event, if that happens.
And the thing you got to remember, we got to give a shout out to the event crew working that Big Ten championship game because they turned around and came back the next day for more tournament games, which is obviously something that gets overlooked. Like all the event staff, the event personnel that goes behind the scenes that come back that may not even get to watch the game, but are still there helping make sure the event goes off without a hitch. And those people were there literally the next day making sure the arena was ready again for more Big Ten basketball.
Absolutely, and it's Big East, dude, not Big Ten.
Huge.
I know you're still stuck with with all the conference realignment, but that was the good old Big East that no longer is kind of that
Well,
good
yeah.
old Big East.
Now Syracuse is in the ACC, and you got UConn in the AAC. So we're
Yeah,
never going to get to see those rivals probably play a tournament game like that again. Like a big,
probably not unless it's an NCAA tournament game, which we haven't seen at all yet because it just seemed like both teams have really just been really mediocre.
yeah, exactly. So let's start with your list. Do you want to start with NCAA or NBA?
Let's go NBA first, since I think the NCAA list is a little bit longer. For my first one, I decided to go big, and I go back to 1998. Game 6, Bulls against Jazz. Just seeing Michael Jordan, hit the game-winning shot to really clinch the 6th title for the Chicago Bulls. I think that would have been a great experience to be a part of, and seeing Jordan hit that shot, which really is a shame because looking back at it, I never saw Jordan play at all in person. So it's really just a shame that I never got to see, probably one of the greatest basketball players ever to play during that time.
I saw it once, and I was a little bit too young to really appreciate it. I think my stomach actually got sick, and I made my cousin take me home because my stomach was sick. And I think it was like 4 or 5 at the time. So I apologize to my cousin Marty for making him take me home. But nevertheless, like I said, Michael Jordan is one of those like once in a lifetime kind of players. And that game was on my list too, to see him hit that game winning shot, to see him do what he had done and come to define how he played, just that clutch shot in a clutch moment, in a clutch game, to be able to be a part of that, which was obviously profiled in the ESPN documentary, The Last Dance. Really, I mean, obviously, I feel like he didn't tarnish it a little bit, but like that moment just didn't have as much value on it when he came back and played for the Wizards. But it's still such an incredible moment. And at that moment, we thought it was Michael Jordan's last shot.
Exactly, and to go back even further, I mean, he makes a clutch steal right at the end as well to get that possession. And the fact that Phil Jackson didn't call timeout, he just said, "Michael, get it done and get us another championship."
Yeah, and I mean that's once again Phil Jackson just having so much faith in Michael Jordan. Which I mean, if I was the coach, I would have Michael tons of faith in Michael Jordan too. I wouldn't get in his way. I just let him do what he needed to do. And I mean, like I said, I think on that ESPN documentary, like The Last Dance, they talked about like Brian Russell just kind of talking a little bit of smack to Michael Jordan, and you never do that. Now, unfortunately, the thing that Brian Russell is remembered for is unfortunately being the guy that shot was made over.
Absolutely, and he's going to be part of that iconic image for the rest of time. Let's put it that way with that shot.
Such an incredible moment.
It was. What's first on your list?
Well, like I said, I didn't have as many NBA games on mine, but the first NBA game I'm going to talk about is actually that one. That one was like on my list as well. So, I mean, the next NBA game I'm going to talk about, though, is the 1984 NBA Finals, Game 7. You have the Bird Magic rivalry getting renewed in the NBA, and Boston's able to take Game 7 of this series. It would have been an incredible game to be there for. Obviously, two of the most storied franchises in sports and the two most storied franchises in the NBA, the Celtics and the Lakers. And to be able to see that game would just be incredible.
Yeah, it would have been great. I got another Magic Larry battle coming up later on, but yeah, I mean, it's just two guys at the peak of their powers. I believe both of them had an MVP award at that time, and just seeing that dominant rivalry that was the Celtics and the Lakers in the '80s, it would have been just fun to be there. I believe it was at the Boston Garden, so seeing the Boston Celtics fans and all that, being there and being at the iconic Boston Garden, it would have just been a great experience to be a part of.
It absolutely would. What are your next two? Because I know you got a few more on this NBA list than I do. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go a couple of Nuggets here. Again, just being a hometown homer, and really not a lot of Nuggets history to be a part of. So I had to include these on my list. Actually, I got three of them actually that involved the Nuggets. So I have the '76 ABA All Star Game, which included the first ever dunk contest between David Thompson and Dr. J. Julius Irving. So that would have been a fun thing as well. And then I'll travel up. Then I'll travel up ahead to 1983. The Pistons Nuggets, the triple overtime regular season game, which is still the highest scoring game ever in NBA history, which is crazy to think of. With all the high scoring that there is now and everybody taking threes, that this record still stands. And just seeing the Doug Moe era, probably at its peak, and just all this high flying up and down basketball, it would have been fun to be a part of. And then 1994, I have Game 5, Nuggets versus Sonics, and just see the first ever one versus eight matchup where the eight seeded team actually beats the one seed and beats them in 5 games and beats them in the Key Arena at Seattle, and seeing Dikembe hold the ball up with all of excitement. And it would have been fun as a Nuggets fan being there and seeing the sad Sonics fans go home.
Yeah, those are all incredible Nuggets moments. Obviously, that Dr. J dunk contest is such an iconic thing in sports culture. I mean, it's one of those ones that you would just love to have been there for that moment, just to be able to see Dr. J take off on some of those classic dunks that still have him in legend status, even to this day. Like he still is out there grading the dunk contest every year this year. And I mean, I think that's such an iconic moment there. Obviously, that high scoring battle with the Pistons would have been a fun one to be at. And then, of course, if you talk about iconic moments in the Nuggets, that image of Dikembe holding the ball following that Game 5 win and that upset of the Sonics, that's probably like the most iconic image of the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, it's up there. If not, it's number two. If you really think about it, it's just that image is just so iconic. I think I guess younger basketball fans won't know this, but as far as people with our age and older, when you think of the Nuggets, you think of that. You think of Mutombo holding the ball and celebrating after defeating the Supersonics.
And then nothing for the next 10 years.
Yes, and then it was just a vast wasteland after that. Really, oh yeah. So we had to appreciate those moments.
We certainly did. And I mean, if we're going to talk about Nuggets moments, I think even as we go forward, the Game 7 of this year's uh, NBA playoffs against the second round against the Clippers, that's going to be one of those ones that stands out and stands the test of time, I think, for Denver Nuggets fans as well. And unfortunately, no Denver Nuggets fans got to be at that one. So the opportunity to be at that one would have been pretty cool.
It would have been fun. Yeah, it would have been fun being one of the family or friends at that bubble and seeing really the Clippers collapse and just seeing them hit brick after brick during the fourth quarter. Again, just watching that game, it was just like crazy. It's like, wow, we're really choking. Like you could see the choke coming before your eyes, and you got really excited as a Nuggets fan because that usually happens to the Nuggets, not to the other team.
Exactly. And I mean, Nikola Jokic is just one of those fun players to watch too. Like getting the chance to see him live is just, it's fun.
He's something special. I'm not gonna lie. It's a pleasure to watch him game after game when I'm working at the Pepsi Center.
He is an incredible talent. And I mean, this is one that I didn't have to my list, but I'm going to add one as well. And I mean, you brought up the dunk contest. I got to throw it back. 1988 slam dunk contest. Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins, just going dunk for dunk down the line. Insane dunk contest. And that would have been just a absolute blast to be at that one. Any dunk contest would have been cool, but that one would have been just so cool to be at.
Yeah, just seeing two very athletic guys at their probably their athletic peak, just dunking and just doing all these crazy dunks that just, man, would have probably been an awe back in the day for people.
And I mean, now it's just, I mean, it's gotten to the, I mean, there's just some really cool ones now. And again, any dunk contest, like any NCAA tournament game, would just be really cool to be at and be really cool to see live. But that would be the one that would jump out the most to me.
Absolutely. It would have been fun and just a pleasure to be at.
It would be huge to have been at that one. What do you got next?
Next, I'm going all the way back to 1962, and that is Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. And again, it's just nobody. That's the best. That's the best part of that game. You would have been there. There was no press, no really like a paper person. But it was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, against the Knicks. There would have been no. There really was no TV. I don't think there was. They didn't radio the game. They didn't radio that game. So just to be a part of that game and seeing, wow, this guy scored 100 points in an actual NBA game would have been a pleasure to be a part of.
It definitely would, and it would have been interesting to see just kind of the difference in the style of play that was played back in like the early 1960s. Because I mean, obviously, the game has evolved since then, so it'd be just kind of interesting to see what that 100 points looked like back then, and just kind of how it compares to today's game.
Yeah, and just see how many free throws he took. I believe he took a ton of free throws as well. So that would have been a fun game to see, and just oh man, it would have been fun.
And of course, another one of that would have been fun to be at. I mean, going a little bit more recent was Kobe's 81 against the Raptors. That would have been incredible to be at. Such an iconic game and such an iconic moment for Kobe Bryant, who's just such a enduring star. And just to be able to see him just go off in a game like that would have been really cool to see.
Yeah, it would have been fun. I would have enjoyed maybe his last game ever too, when he scored 62 points.
Yeah, that'd been great.
Yeah, to win.
Also, I mean, I think it would have been fun to even see the one where he like tears his Achilles and still makes the 2 free throws before walking off the court. Just Kobe Bryant's such an icon, so another chance to see him would have been awesome.
Yes, it would. Yeah, it would have been. It would have been fun to see him play. I actually did get a chance to see him play, so again, it was a pleasure to see him.
Yeah, he's one of those ones that now I think about it, I'm not sure I ever did get to see him in person.
Yeah, he was awesome. I think the one game I went to, it just felt like he couldn't miss at all, and it was just like, oh my god, does this guy ever miss? And this was like young Kobe too. So
Oh yeah. And the answer to that is no. He really doesn't miss, and he certainly doesn't miss much. That's for sure.
absolutely. What do you have on your list?
Let's see. I think I just said mine with the Kobe
Oh,
81
with the
player. So, yeah.
Kobe. Okay. So I'm going back to 2004, and probably really one of the most black eye moments in the in NBA history. I'm going with the Malice at the Palace, the Pistons Pacers game. It would have been fun just to be a part of that crowd. Of course, probably would have been opposite of the scorers table because that's where all the magic happens. And seeing Ron Artest and Steven Jackson storming the stands and punching people. It would have just been like one of those like surreal experiences. It's like, wow, just seeing some guy like coming into the stands. It's just something you don't really see anymore.
Yeah, you never really see it anymore, and I don't think you really saw it much back then even. It's one of those things like when I said last week I wanted to be there for a baseball brawl. To be there for a brawl like that where players are literally going into the stands for a fight, it would have been insane to be at something like that. And that would have been a really cool game to be at. Once again, far away from where Ron Artest was actually running into the crowd. But it would have been really cool to be a part of that and really cool to be at that game. Once again, a very notorious game that just seemed like a regular season game.
Yeah, and it would have been fun. It would have been just crazy. It just wow, like wow, people were storming the stands, and we would have just probably would have been looking at each other, going like, is this really happening? Is this really happening?
Exactly. And I mean, that's the beauty of sports because, I mean, why you got to almost seize every opportunity that you can to go to a sporting event. And I mean, if that's one thing COVID has taught us, is that we obviously are missing getting to be at these games now. But you never know when something exciting or memorable is going to happen. Like I said, that one, just a regular run-of-the-mill regular season game. And here we are talking about it, was it now 15 years later?
Yes. Yeah, 16 coming up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what do you have next for your list?
I mean, this is my last NBA game. I don't know how many more you have left, but this is my last NBA game, and that is, of course, the Michael Jordan flu game.
Ooh. Ooh,
Now,
that would yeah.
obviously, again, a rough game for Jazz fans, so you're not around the crowd that's really getting to enjoy the game. But just to be able to be there once again to experience the greatness of Michael Jordan battling what we now know is stomach poison or stomach flu or food poisoning, to see him be able to battle through that and be able to score the 38 points and to be able to hit yet another iconic buzzer beater, just to see him do that on that stage in that setting, that is why to me he is the greatest of all time. And another chance to see him play on the biggest stage and be able to overcome what really was so much adversity to be able to win that game is amazing.
Yeah, he was just very dominant in that game. I mean, he looking very, 65, 70%, especially with the food poisoning as we know now. And it's just, wow, like, geez. And he still overcame a ton and really carried the Bulls to a victory in Utah in the NBA finals.
Do you think the Utah pizza place that he ordered the pizza from gave him food poisoning intentionally?
I am not sure about that, but after watching The Last Dance and all that, I may not trust a Utah Pizza Hut now. So I may have to go to like Domino's or Papa John's or something like that.
I do that anyway, but that's another story.
Oh man, it's just crazy. Like yeah, I mean, he should have been like better prepared and knowing that like really Utah is kind of like a sleepy town in a way where really they close up a ton of shops. So you should have been like more prepared and be like, hey, I'm going to order takeout at this place. And I guess people figured out it was Michael Jordan, and they tried to do some secret operative plan to try to poison him and help the Jazz.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just a question. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it would have been interesting to know if that was the case. If you knew this pizza was going to Michael Jordan, if you knew you had a chance to help your team win a championship, would you do it?
Would I do it? I guess so. I guess. I mean, if it's to help the Nuggets, but if the Nuggets had won maybe a couple of championships, you don't do it. But if it's a a team that hadn't won at all, like the Jazz, and really been really kind of successful, but not really gotten over the hump, and this is the chance to get over the hump and really stand in his way in Jordan, I think you got to kind of do it. You got to kind of food poison him a little bit.
It's definitely an interesting question. I think I would do it too.
Yes, if the stakes are worth it, you got to kind of do it as a fan. You got to do everything you can sometimes to help this team win.
Well, that was quite the tangent. I love it. I think I mean, I agree. I think you got to do it. I think real fans, if you know you can, I mean, I want to go like if we go to sports movies where like, what's the one, Celtic Pride, where they actually kidnap the star. I'm not talking about kidnapping the star, but
Yeah, I'm not good. Yeah, we're not talking like going Nancy Kerrigan on we're going Celtic Pride or Nancy Kerrigan or something like that. But maybe just stick in a little food poisoning and be like, oops. So
right,
he feels bad the next day, but then he'll feel better the next couple of days.
right, absolutely. And obviously, it didn't adversely affect Michael in that game, which would have been just, especially looking back on how iconic that game is now, a really cool
Absolutely.
game to be at.
Absolutely, yeah, and it probably it probably helped the Lord Jordan that Utah pizza place.
Exactly. Now, what's your next one?
So I got two more, but I'm going to combine them. They're both LeBron centric games as well. I'm going to go 2013 Heat versus Spurs Game 6, and then 2016 Cavs versus Warriors Game 7. I'm going to the Cavs Warriors game. That would have been an interesting game to be a part of. Seeing Cleveland, probably one of the most torment sports cities in America. Sorry, Atlanta, it really is. It just seeing them getting kicked in the teeth again, and then having them come back and beating this Warriors team that people were ready to pencil in as the greatest team of all time, with that 73-9 record, and just ready to put them in, and then having them falter and losing that 3-1 lead.
Yeah, I mean, that was such an iconic game. I mean, you look back at that Heat game. I look back on that one. It was Ray Allen making the big shot at the end, correct?
Yes, that is the Ray Allen game. Well, it would have been funny too, because a ton of Heat fans left that game early and then tried to come back in once they found out that they tied the game and all that, because they left early because they thought they were going to lose. So it was on like SportsCenter's not top 10 like number one list for at least a few months after that, because it was just so funny seeing all the Heat fans thinking, oh, our team lost, we lost, the series, to come back and win the game and force in a game 7.
Yeah, that's obviously an iconic one. I mean, if we were around back then, my bonehead sports play of my bonehead of the week would have been the San Antonio Spurs defense there for leaving Ray Allen of all people open for that three. Like they double teamed, I believe it's Bosch on the inside, and I believe a two would have tied it. Instead, you leave Ray Allen, who's only the NBA's all-time leading three-point shooter, open for a three. He should have never had anyone. He should have never had a chance to even catch that ball.
Absolutely, and they had a chance to get a rebound as well, to get a rebound and maybe get a foul and secure the win, but they just couldn't get that precious rebound, and it came back to bite them in the butt, and Ray Allen hits that iconic shot.
He certainly does, and then that's another. Going back to your other one with the Cavs, I mean, I think I remember the officiating being that game being a little bit more Cavs centric. Nevertheless, it was an impressive win by the Cavs, and another impressive win by LeBron in that game.
Right, and then going back with the '98 Game 6, I mean, it's probably LeBron's iconic moment. Is probably the block on Iguodala during that game. So you probably would have saw LeBron's probably photo-esque moment, or his history-defining moment is that block right there.
Certainly is. Now, I mean, my next game, I mean, this is obviously a basketball game that doesn't fit in either the NCAA or the college ranks, and that's going to be the 1992 Olympic gold medal game. And I mean,
Ooh, dream team.
exactly. You got to, I mean, not just to be able to see the dream team play would have been insane. And I mean, that would have just been just to see all those guys on the court at the same time working together and representing the country would have been just a sight to see and be able to watch them play. It would have been an unreal experience there at the Olympics. Just that would have been amazing.
It would have been fun. It would have been fun seeing them beat up Croatia and beating them by 30 and really making it, not really making it a game, and just seeing them turn into basically like an international form of dunk contest. So it would have been fun, and just seeing the probably one of the greatest collections of teams ever assembled on a roster would have been just fun to see, and to be in Spain as well.
Exactly. I mean, obviously going to Spain was something that's also on my list, but to be able to be there and be able to see the U.S. Olympic team and the '92 one was just such an insane collection of talent. So that would have been just incredible.
It would have been awesome. It would have been just a great moment to be a part of, and just being there for the Olympics, and then watching the dream teams. Seeing Jordan at his peak. Magic and Larry Bird kind of dwindling a little bit, but seeing like Barkley, Robinson, Stockton, Malone, Clyde Drexler. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, just to see that team would have been unreal. Oh man, you got Barkley, you got Pippen, you got Patrick Ewing, you got Malone, you got all these guys that would just have been insane. And then, going back to the Last Dance, the chance to see that scrimmage that they talked about, where they were just going at each other, would have been insane to see as well. But just that team, obviously, you got to pick a game where you get to see that team.
Absolutely, and seeing them win the gold medal, and then probably staying after for the award ceremony and hearing the Star Spangled Banner playing would have been just a glorious experience, and watching them get the gold medal.